I have a few questions about
The book.
so shiny.
Isn't it beautiful? Gillian has just, her cover made me cry. It's beautiful.
It's so pretty. Because
Yeah.
you've got three illustrators in this, haven't we? We'll
Yeah.
talk about that. But to start off, why don't you introduce your lovely self and tell us a little bit about this incredible book here?
Okay, so I'm Lisette Auton. I'm disabled and neurodivergent. I'm in Darlington, northeast of England. I'm a very proud northerner. And the book, The Secret of Haven Point, it's a middle grade book. It's an adventure story. It's based on the coast where I grew up at South Shields at red and white stripy Suter Lighthouse. There's a group of friends, adventurers called the Recklings who, in a community by themselves, there's fierce mermaids. They all wreck from ships together. There is a captain with a kitten in his beard, and outsiders are glimpsed and they're trying to get in, and Alpha and a gang of friends have to work out what to do about it. But the thing that made it really special for me and made me want to write it is that there's northeast words and language in it, and also it's a cast of disabled characters and they're celebrated exactly the way they are, and the topic isn't disability, they just happen to be disabled.
Yeah, which is what I loved so much about the book, reading it, because it didn't focus on that. It wasn't them trying to, like, I find a lot in books from the past and TV shows, especially ones that have magical elements, the magic's almost used as a get get better, get like everyone else scheme, which
Yeah, yeah.
don't do that.
No, the magically fixed trope in
Yeah,
books is horrible, or that the disabled person has to stay at home and not do any adventuring, or they get to be like the person that's made fun of or something, or especially in loads of stuff, it's disability equals baddie. Especially if it's a facial difference, that's used loads as a horrible trope. So yeah, I was a bit fed up of that, really.
yeah. So what was your main inspiration behind writing the book? Was it kind of to turn those negative tropes on their head and show the realities of how incredible people with disabilities are and how they should be viewed just like everyone else? Or was there something else going on? Did you just fancy writing about some first mermaids because they are amazing?
It's Mermaids and Captain with Kitten in his beard and Lighthouse were the major things. But
I've never wanted a beard so bad in my life.
when I do school sessions, one of the things that we do is what would you keep in your beard? My favourite bit of it, completely. Um, yeah, I think the disabled people being part of it wasn't really something that I maybe consciously thought of so much at the beginning because I'm disabled. Loads of my mates are disabled. Just if I'm going to write people, that's who I'm going to write. And then it turned out that was kind of a big deal. And then I realised that it's the book that I would have wanted that was missing from the bookshelves. It's just not there. There's some brilliant books coming through with some disabled characters, but an adventure where everyone's disabled and they all get to take part in the adventure, and some of them are really mean and some of them are naughty and they get into trouble, and it was just that whole thing of I wanted to write a story for disabled children, but I also wanted it to be the one where people who are non-disabled read it and maybe don't even realise, or they get halfway way through and go, oh, so it's kind of that. I didn't in any way want it to be like that horrible inspirational stuff. I
Mm.
just wanted it to be the book that I wanted to read that had my mates in it.
Which is the best reason to write anything. Yeah, I think sometimes, especially, I find it either goes one or two ways. There's either no disabled people or they're kind of viewed negatively or sidelined, or it's an inspiration story And neither of those are they weren't what I would have wanted to read when I was a kid and I was going through all of my journeys with hospital appointments and stuff. Not what I was interested in, and still is not what I am interested in now. So to see books where it's just you in a book.
Yeah. And if there's millions more of them on a shelf, then this can be one that you get halfway through and go, do you know what, I'm not so bothered about this. I'll read another one instead. Hopefully, we'll get loads of people reading it who are disabled and or have other missings from bookshelves, and they'll write loads of books, and then there'll be loads to choose from, and then that'll be marvellous.
It will, definitely. I know that in the author's note, because I read those, I'm that person. You're a little bit nervous about your words being out in the world. Why was that? And how does it feel now that they have been out in the world for a little bit and people have been seeing them and reading them?
Yeah, I was really scared because there aren't many books out there, and I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and I didn't want to get it wrong. But lots of people read the book first, and I consulted lots of my disabled friends, and then we had an amazing inclusivity reader who read the book as well, but it still didn't quite feel enough. So I wanted it to kind of, and my editor was brilliant and she knew that I was really nervous about it going out there. So it was her idea. When I'd written a bit to her about why I was feeling nervous, she said, well, why don't you just write that for the book and we can put it out there? So it's brilliant because lots of disabled people use different way to describe themselves. Lots of disabled people, some people say people with a disability, some people say disabled people. So I kind of wanted to say that that's all okay, but this is the language I'm choosing and why. And if you would like to write a book in other language, please do, because I would quite like to read it. So yeah, I think it was a call to action and me kind of feeling a bit better about it all. But since then, I've made a concerted decision not to read reviews because I think it would terrify me, and also because I don't want it to change anything else that I'm writing. But some of the lovely messages on Twitter and emails that have come direct to me from parents and from children just saying thank you. So we've had some where they're like, whoa, the ships in bottles, that's amazing, and completely not realising the disabled element. And there's some people who are just going, this was the book that I needed to read, thank you. So that's been lovely.
Yeah, it's definitely a book that I would have, I loved reading it now at 27, but if I'd have read it when I was a kid, I can't even imagine how that would have felt, because there wasn't books like that when I was a kid. So this is a tricky question. If you could sum your book up in just 5 words, what 5 words would they be? I always feel really mean asking questions.
You haven't told me about this one. I'm having to count my fingers. My dad will laugh at this because I always need to count my fingers. Adventuring in Lighthouse with Mermaids.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thank you.
Where did the mermaids come from, the idea of the mermaids? Was it were the mermaids always part of the story, or was it something that came from, obviously, the setting? They link in really well with the, obviously, lighthouse, beach, sea, mermaids. But I always like knowing whether things were there from the very kind of beginning of the idea.
They weren't. I wrote a really, really, really bad, terrible, awful story. I know you meant to write an awful first draft, but I wrote an awful story. And it was set, it had a lighthouse in it, but for some reason I moved it down south and set it in the Victorian era, because I kind of felt that I should be writing that. And then an agent had a look at it and went, you can write, but do you really want to write that? Because it doesn't feel like when I'm reading it you do. So then I realised that I kind of gave me permission to write anything. So Northern, that came first. Captain with Kitten and his beard, that was there immediately. The first chapter was just there right from the start. So I knew Alpha and Captain. It was like Someone stuck them in my brain. It was amazing. And then I had this gang of friends, and then I wrote the Mermaids. I wrote Aphira because I wanted her relationship with Alpha, and I wrote it all. And I said to my husband, do you know what? I think this book that I'm writing is really boring. It hasn't got anything interesting in it at all or magical. And he was like, what about the mermaids? Are they not a little bit magical? I was like, oh yeah. Because they felt like such real characters, I'd kind of forgotten that mermaids don't really exist. So it kind of just happened naturally, and I didn't quite realise that I was writing them until he told me.
That's the best though, because I think they read as such like in-depth characters that I kind of forgot that mermaids don't exist for this. Like, which is the sign of a very good and very well developed character. So,
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely just viewed them as like, and I mean, they're amazing. And the illustrations. So let's get on to the illustrations. So you have 3 illustrators in this book.
Yes.
So do you want to talk us through the, I believe, cover?
Gillian Gamble.
Yeah.
For the front cover, which made me cry when I first saw it, which is incredible. Yep.
Like, I'll link a better photo to it as well, but just
all disabled characters on the front cover, not just one, all of them, blooming marvellous.
And then I believe this is incredible. Like,
so this is Luke Ashworth. So I got told that there was going to be a map, and I was majorly excited because I love, that's the first thing I find in a book. Acknowledgements and then a map. That's where I go to.
You're the same as me.
There's no acknowledgements. Gutted, don't want to read the book. And then I found out that they were doing a cross-section of the lighthouse. And I want it as a duvet cover. There's a tiny little room for cats. There's a little bathroom. There's the little door at the top of the lighthouse. It's the most incredible drawing in the universe. Luke is just phenomenal. So yeah, that made me cry for about a week when I saw that for the first time.
And then obviously you've got your big. But I am obsessed. Let's see if I can find one. With these.
The chapter headers. Yeah, and they give a clue. It's amazing. So Valentina, I don't know how many there are. There might be about. So Valentina Toro is the illustrator of those and the full page spreads. And I don't know whether there's like 10 or 15 of them, but they all give a little bit of a clue about what the chapter is going to be about. So Emma, my editor, placed them all in each one. There's the one inside of the pill box with the things that are on the top of the thing, and then the one with the handkerchief in. Oh,
don't. Spoilers, I won't say anything, but that movie. There's this one.
Yes, that's my favourite. It's amazing with all the medical textbooks and everything. They're just extraordinary.
I only realised there were hints though when I was going back through, like after I'd read it and I was doing like trying to pull together some really interesting questions. I was like, and then it clicked in my head, and I was like, and I like to think of myself as quite like a clever reader, but you know what I mean, like I'm usually quite like switched onto that kind of thing, but I was that engrossed that I think my brain was like, I need more words. I'm trying to find a full page spread, and it's because I've got tabs in and they're distracting me with their colour.
Yes.
Oh, I can't show that one, that's a spoiler. Let's go near the cave, and I feel like that's a spoiler.
Yeah, I think that probably is. That gives away too much.
Well, this is just nice lighthouse.
Yeah, Mermaids doing the wrecking, and Badger sitting on the top of Cleopatra's Needle. Yeah, just amazing. And the one that just made me weep, there's one where they're making the bunting for the wedding, and they're all sitting around the table, and all of the characters are disabled in some way. There's somebody in a wheelchair, somebody has a prosthetic leg, someone has a scar behind their ear, someone has is doing the bunting with their feet. And it was just one of those moments where I went, I don't think I've seen anything like that before in a book ever. I want that like massively on my wall somewhere because it's just extraordinary. The artwork is beautiful. I'm so lucky.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those moments where my brain, I was looking at it and I was like, one, this is an amazing illustration. And then it clicked in my head that I hadn't seen anything like it before. And it was like,
Yeah.
that kind of like, I'm going to tear up because like, that is what I always wanted when I was younger to see.
Yeah.
And what I know will mean a lot to a lot of people, because reading for me when I was younger was my like escapism from everything. So I threw myself into books. And as much as I'd love to imagine myself as the kind of heroes I read when I was younger, with the bows and arrows and like the big swords fighting, I'd last 2 minutes in those kinds of worlds. So to see like a book where I could imagine myself on the adventure and it would be realistic for me to be on that adventure, and it wouldn't be an issue for me to be on that adventure, nor would I have to spend 20 hours explaining that I could do the adventure. Which I think is part of it sometimes. It's the, no, I can do it if you...
Yeah. If our access needs are met, then we'll have a marvellous time, thank you very much.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's a far better way of putting it than I was trying to. So, obviously, The Secret of Haven Point is filled with magic and mermaids. I keep coming back to the mermaids because I love the mermaids so much. However, the magic in Haven Point isn't so much as kind of like wielded, and that's like a Spider-Man thing. As in by the individuals in the book. Was that kind of like a conscious decision? And if so, why?
Yeah, I kind of I like to imagine worlds that are very normal, that you could just wander into and there'd be that little spark of something that's slightly different, slightly unusual, but just feels like a bit like the mermaids, with me not realizing that I'd done an imaginary mystical character that just feels so ordinary. So I think that's what I prefer. I like reading books where there's proper magic and people are doing spells and doing all that kind of stuff and proper fantasy. I love reading it, but I find no joy in writing it. And sometimes as well, it can be one of those things where it's like the get out of jail free card. Oh no, this has happened. Don't worry, we'll do some magic. So I kind of quite like it where the magic is in the setting, in nature, in the friendships and relationships that you build around you. And that's kind of where there's that underlying bit of, I don't know, when I was little, I kind of would imagine that, I don't know, my back garden had like a hint of something mystical and magic. And that's kind of how I feel. And it's that childhood thing of when you're making up adventures and stuff, it's kind of, that's the kind of magic that I like writing and reading.
Yeah, definitely. So get out of jail free card is probably relates to this question, in that obviously it's a lighthouse and lighthouses are not known as the most accessible buildings in the world. How important was it for you to kind of have the lifts and mechanisms and engineering elements in the book and kind of discussed in the book? Because I loved reading those bits. It was really interesting and also amazing to read from a community that was kind of self-contained. that they managed to do it and things like that. So yeah.
I think there's something that Cap'n says, and I can't quote it. I mean, I know I wrote it, but I can't really remember. But it's something to do with someone saying, "Why don't you just have everyone on the ground floor?" And he's like, "Ease doesn't like make for ingenuity," except it doesn't use the word ingenuity, well, that kind of thing. And I think disabled communities are really brilliant at adapting, make do and mending. We can thrive if we're given the means to do so. And so it was really important to me that every single person in that book, and any single disabled person who just happens to magically come from real life into the book, would be able to get anywhere. And it's all like stuff that they've salvaged and made together, like the lift that goes up the lighthouse is all like grandfather like clock, like cogs on the wall, and you turn stuff. And it's just simple things like when Cap'n's calling attention and making a noise, someone flashes a light on and off as well. It's like none of this is rocket science or dead expensive. It's just that the way it should be. And in the illustration that Luke's done of the cutout of the lighthouse, the lift goes up and stops on every single floor, including the top. So no matter where you go in the lift in there, you can get to everywhere. So I would just like lighthouses to make themselves completely accessible, please. I mean, there's a plan there of how to do it. You just
have
need
a
some
blueprint.
Exactly.
Because I think that's something that I think about a lot with places, in that you could make everything that is required be on the bottom floor, but I want to be where the big flashing light is.
Yeah. And the little door where you can give it a little fist bump. Yeah, we should always be able to get right to the top of stuff. So, I mean, I know it's not real because access is a massive issue, but it's my world and it's filled with my friends and people that I love, and I want it to be accessible, and I want to have like kindness and hope and love throughout everything that I write. So that's what I'm going to carry on doing.
Definitely. And I adored reading all about like the grandfather clock, like cogs and everything. I was like, oh, I could like trying to figure out how it would work. And then I was like, oh, it got to a point where I was like, you could add banisters onto this.
I love it. Fantastic.
Like, I'm just adding to
Brilliant. Love it.
like, oh, what about banisters? We could have ones with different textures. See, I'm getting carried away with that, which is what
Absolutely.
But hey ho, sign of a good book if I'm trying to add like little elements in that I think would work too. Adding to the inventions, not adventures. So obviously the Secret of Haven Point has the found family trope. I'd love to know who your favourite kind of member of the family is.
Oh, no.
If you can pick one.
Oh, that's really hard. See, I've got a major soft spot for Alpha because throughout a lot of the book, Alpha's just a complete twerp. She's a twit. She gets stuff wrong all the time. Like most of the stuff that goes wrong is because Alpha's like keeping stuff to herself or getting it wrong. So I really love her for that. Badger completely cracks me up. But like I want to be Badger when I grow up, basically.
Yeah, me too.
But I think my favourite, and it's one of the smaller characters, it's a tie between Flea and Large. Like Large, I just love how clever he is. It takes him a bit of time to get there, but if you give him time, and everyone respects him so much, and I love that. And Flea is just this bundle of energy, is just incredible. So yeah, I'd probably get fed up with Flea in about 3 seconds flat. So if I had to pick someone for the longer term, we'll go Large.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I'd have to take a lot of naps to feel
Yeah, me too.
Just like, yeah, okay, I'll be 10-15 minutes, just you stay there, I'm just off into this room over here. Yeah, the one with the beanbag, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can just nip to one of the cottages, have a nap at like Maura and Laura's, and then come back in a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you find creating all of the characters? Because there's so many characters and they're all so unique, and they all have, even the smaller characters have such like a strong sense of like who they are and how they'd react in certain situations. Was it really, I can imagine it's quite difficult pinning them down, or did they all kind of like just come to you and say, hi, I belong in Haven Point,
Yeah.
write me?
Do you know what? There's loads of stuff that I struggle with when I'm writing and I find hard. And the first draft is usually just horrific, and it's got lots of me telling me the story, and that's kind of the way I have to write it out. Then I have to turn it into far more adventure-y stuff afterwards. But what I was really surprised about was that not much of the work involved making the characters bigger or stronger or more so, because they were just there. It was honestly, I could see them all. I knew them all like we'd been mates for years. They just randomly populated the place, and some of them just kept like, there was like more of them just kept coming in. I was like, for goodness sake, you know, like I've got enough of you to contend with right now. Thank you very much. I really don't need another one. But
I've got so many pages I can write. Like
exactly, we can't fit you in.
Still have people be able to pick the book up and actually read it.
Completely. I think it was when I found two of like the later additions to it, which seems quite weird now because so much of the story is structured around them, with Jericho and Willis. But once they came to the party, I was like, oh, I know what the story is now. Welcome, you two.
I bet that's a really strange but kind of like exciting feeling to just have these kind of people show up and be like, hi.
Yeah. Which was bizarrely completely what happened. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to have to write loads of it more like all over again now that you've come, because that bit makes no sense. But yeah, it was for the right reasons. They did make it a much better story, even if I was grumbling at the time because I had to do yet another edit.
Yeah. So what's your favourite part of the writing process then? Because is it edits? Because it's not sounding like it's edits that fills you with joy.
So I love I call it like going to find a story. So I'm not much of a believer in writer's block. I have loads of projects on at the same time. I work in loads of different areas, so like doing film or working in theatre and doing lots of different things. So it means that sometimes you do need a break from what you're doing because you need thinking time. And I really think that thinking time is writing time. I don't subscribe to that 3 million words a day thing. None of that. If I'm thinking about it, I'm doing it. But sometimes I get a bit stuck and tangled up, so I work on something else. But I love the bit when I'm like at the beginning, I was like, I'm interested in lighthouses. So I'd read loads of books about lighthouses, then something else would spark like interest, and I'd go and like follow that, and then that would lead to something else, and I'd follow that one. So I love that bit. I hate the first draft because it's awful. I've got written up on my wall a message to myself that I wrote in an email to my editor and she sent back to me, and it says, note to future me, first draft is pulling teeth. You will hate it. Do it quickly, then it's done. It's only a necessary template, then you get to do the fun bits later. So yeah, love the research, hate the first draft. It's like pulling teeth. It's like if I get 100 words down, then like I feel like I need someone to like pull a party popper. And then I think like the second draft where I go, ooh, there's more interesting stuff. And then the later, like I'm in the middle of edits for book 2 at the moment, and I think I've spent 3 days getting it worse, Charlie. I think I've just like obliterated it. So I'm going to have to reverse 3 days and start again.
I love that, because that's something I would totally do. I'd go off on a tangent and just
I've done that.
This is a brilliant idea, and then I'd sit down like 3 days later and be like,
yeah, I've just made a mess. I've made an absolute mess. I followed a tangent that made no sense. I've made it far too complicated. I can't even pull it back. And each day when I do writing, I name it by the date. So I'm basically just going to have to like put all those 3 days in the bin and go back to where it was 3 days ago, because I can't untangle this. It's just, I've just made a mess.
I love that. Like, just such a, like, human thing, because I think sometimes, I know I do, as a reader, I just like imagine authors to be, they are the greatest people ever, but like just sit there, it flows, and like it's all good. So like I love the fact that I can imagine me sitting there doing exactly the same.
She's a great Lisette, man. What are you doing? Really? You've eaten lots of Jaffa cakes and you've sat in your dressing gown, but have you done anything useful? I mean, I think I might have discovered a couple of things, and that's what usually happens. So I
Yeah.
think some things I go, ooh, that's exciting. I've just done them completely the wrong way, in the wrong space, in the wrong time, which has affected loads of stuff, which now makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So, yeah, the only way to sort that out is by chucking it away and going back to where I was 3 days ago, I think.
But as long as you've discovered things, it's not time wasted. That's
Yeah.
what my friend.
Tell my editor that, please.
Dear editor.
Thank you, Charlie.
So I always think this is a stressful question as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be cause stress. But if a reader could take just one thing away from your book, what would it be? What would you like it to be?
Disabled people are adventurers if you let us do it our own way.
I want that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, definitely. Matching t-shirts, awesome.
Yes, I will make those t-shirts. I'll do it now. It will have an orange t-shirt. You'll have to let me know what colour t-shirt you want. And
Purple.
we'll match. Well, we'll be the contrasts of each other.
Oh, you could have the writing in purple and I'll have the writing in orange. Sorted.
You do realise I'm going to mock up a template.
You do realise if it's not like here by pigeon within 45 minutes, I'm going to be crying.
I just love that, because I think that's one of the things that like I'd hope for everyone to take away from it, that everyone is capable of doing things if you let them use their own way. And also, if someone says they can do it, let them do it, would be.
Yeah.
If I say that I can do X, Y, and Z, I can do X, Y, and Z.
Might take us a bit longer. We might do it in a slightly different way. We might need a bit of help to do it, but we can do it.
Yeah, and you don't need to watch over our shoulders either, because. But that's a whole nother tangent. So, a slightly more fun question, hopefully. If you loved The Secret of Haven Point, you'll also love.
Ooh.
I always think that's a really fun question, but also really, I'd find that stressful, because I think when people ask me questions like that, my brain forgets everything I've ever read, ever.
I think anything by Kerry Burnell or by Elle McNichol.
Yeah.
Yeah, those would be my recommendations. Definitely. Go there next, readers.
So, you alluded to a book too, which is the best news I've had all day. Is there anything you can tell us other than you've lost 3 days?
I've lost 3 days
of it, or
Yeah.
is it going to be a continuation of the incredible adventures where you left off, or?
It's not a sequel. It's not a sequel. There are not the same characters, but it does have some Easter eggs scattered about. So I quite like it. I know I've read some books before where they're by the same author, and you know when they say something and you go, oh, I know that because like I'm a super fan and I get that.
Yeah.
I love those bits when I'm reading books. So I've dropped some bits like that in the next book. So there'll be little things that you might go, did she mean? And yes, I did. Apart from the ones that I didn't mean, but then I'll take the credit for those as well.
I'll be like messaging you like, oh my God, I saw it on page 6.
completely, and I'll be like, yes, Charlie. What did I write again?
What did I write on page 6? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's February 23. So same time as that one came out next year, that one will be out.
I don't know if I can wait that long. I'll just have to come over and hack into your computer. Very.
Well, I can give you a really, really shonky edit where it all goes wrong because I've just spent 3 days doing that.
If you want to read how it's not going to be in the file.
Yeah.
I love that. So they were all of my questions. But I do have one more that's kind of popped into my head as we've been talking. Obviously, The Secret of Haven Point talks a lot about language, and how it's used and things like that. Is that predominantly because you think words and language is really powerful and that kind of thing? That's how I felt it came across, but I'm always interested in kind of because sometimes things like there's extra things that people reading might pick up on that maybe you didn't initially realize. So I always like to. I'm nosy, you see.
Yeah, I think words are the best things in the universe. I think they're awesome. I say that I do stuff with words. That's my job title. Lisette Auton does stuff with words.
That because mine's I doodle.
I love it. Fantastic.
Literally, when people go, "Oh, what did you do at university?" I don't go, "Oh, I did textile design and specialised in print." I went, "I got a degree in doodling."
Yeah, that's what I did. Doing stuff with words, lots of it, and that's what I do. And I can't believe it's my job. It's awesome. I do. I think they're really, really powerful, and I think they're amazing. And I think that everybody has a right to them. And I think words have power also to cause harm or hurt, and I don't want that. For me, some people think disabled is a word that is either shameful or it's small and insignificant, or it's a word that's very vulnerable or one to be embarrassed about. I think disabled as a word is a massive source of pride and identity and power and wonderfulness, and I think it's a word that needs to be claimed, and it's a word that needs to be turned on its head so people know how amazing and awesome it is. So I think that was behind it all, was just going, if you are it, claim it, you're great. And there was a lot about the social model of disability, how I am brilliant exactly the way I am, but it's access to things that causes problems, and it's others maybe limiting what they think I can do or be that causes problems. So the world disables me rather than my body or my brain. So I think those were my powerful wordy messages that I wanted to get across.
Well, you definitely managed that. Because I think I know I struggled with the word disabled when I was growing up, because there's the whole chronically ill / does it equate to disabled?
Yeah.
Or are you chronically ill, even though that now I view them as interchangeable because, you know, they are. But when I was younger, it was a very it was very complicated for me to get my head around, especially being the only person that I knew who was really kind of using the words openly. So I think that the way you've managed to kind of insert kind of the power of language in an adventure book with kittens and beards and mermaids is just incredible. And I adore it, and I cannot wait for next year to get another book.
Yay!
I even tabbed, especially Laura got a blue tab because Laura is very much me.
Just awesome. Yeah.
Not a bit tired, but sometimes day's noise or even light is just a bit much. That's just me. It's me.
Yeah, there's a lot of me in Laura as well, and I just I think there is that thing where the deaf community and the disabled community and the chronically ill and mental health, They all sometimes stay under their own umbrellas, and that is fine because I interchange my words, and being neurodivergent, I swap them around. But I think sometimes there's that massive power in collective action and collective change and being a part of it. And I think you can keep your own like impairment words, but I think the umbrella of disabled is really strong and powerful. And the more that we tell people that it's a really, not just an okay word, like is when people do like differently abled or things like that because they're scared of the word and they think that the word might cause shame or fear. No, use it. It's brilliant. More disabled, please.
Yeah, yeah. It is a word that explains things.
Yeah, the end.
The end. Just yeah, the end. That's literally it.
Yeah.
Well, it has been amazing talking to you this evening.